I'm talking to you from downtown St. Louis, just a couple of doors down from the mayor's office, the city hall, just a few blocks from the Mississippi River itself, and I guess north of y'all in Louisiana there. And bring greetings on behalf of myself and our staff, but as well as our co-chairs, as was mentioned. Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome is our co-chair, along with the mayor of Bettendorf, Iowa, Mayor Bob Gallagher. We have two co-chairs that lead our association, and they're assisted by an executive committee of 10 mayors, one from each of the states that touches the Mississippi River. And for Louisiana, the state chair is Belinda Constant, the mayor of Gretna, just across the river from New Orleans. So we have great mayors in Louisiana all around Mayor Broome, all the way up to the first city on the Mississippi River, if you're heading south, and that is Bemidji, Minnesota, down to your neck of the woods there in the Baton Rouge area. So we have 100 mayors that are part of our cohort. And like I said, we're headquartered here in St. Louis, but we have mayors in all 10 states along the Mississippi River. And it has been quite a journey to bring this river back to a state of good repair where the ecology and the economy are healthy. Special thanks to Haggai for the invitation to speak with you today and just sort of share with you an overview of what our mayors have been working on, why we came together, and what we're trying to achieve for the Mississippi River, but more importantly, how we're trying to do that with Rotary. If you're a mayor in any of our towns along the Mississippi River, you really can't get to that seat without having a great relationship with your local Rotary Club or clubs, as the case may be for several of our larger cities like St. Paul and Minneapolis and Memphis. We have several Rotary clubs in those cities, and our mayors have to have great relationships with all of them. We have many mayors that are Rotarians themselves, have been for decades. One of my good friends, he's just south of me now, the mayor of Arnold, Missouri, Mayor Ron Counts. He's been a Rotarian for over 30 years. So this was a no-brainer partnership for us, for our mayors to be engaged with Rotary, is especially the case when we found out we shared the same mission, clean water, healthy living, and a healthy environment. That has been a mission-driven initiative for Rotary, and it is certainly one of our top priorities. So what I'm going to do is just give you an overview of what our mayors do and why they came together to form an association of mayors along the Mississippi River. We're kind of unique in that regard in the world. And then what we've succeeded in doing and what we have to do next, especially vis-a-vis our collaboration with Rotary. So first of all, in 2012, a lot of our mayors, our cities, were actually in the thick of disaster. If you recall, in 2011, especially in the Louisiana, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi area of the river, you'd just gone through a 500-year flood event. The lower Mississippi River went through in 2011 what my area of the river in the middle reaches went through in 1993. Record flood. Memphis recorded their highest flood level ever in history during that year. It was devastating. And it cost over $4 billion in direct losses. In 2012, we went through the direct opposite, a 50-year drought. It was actually the second most expensive natural disaster on Earth for that year. It cost our basin, our nation, over $30 billion in actual losses from the drought of 2012. And to top it all off, a sort of a trifecta for those 2 years was Hurricane Isaac. I don't know if folks remember Hurricane Isaac very well, but it was tailor-made for the Mississippi River. It came up through New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and it traveled up the Mississippi River all the way to Iowa. It even came through my area of St. Louis with damaging winds, straight line winds, and flooding all the way up to the Davenport Quad Cities area before it finally petered out. So over a 400-day period, we went through a 500-year flood, a 50-year drought, and a hurricane that went all the way to the upper Mississippi River. That was a lot to handle. And our corridor had been going through a sort of benign neglect, if you will, at the national level for a long time. Nothing intentional, just other priorities around the country captured attention, like the Everglades of Florida, the Columbia River of the Pacific Northwest, and all the endangered species that are along it, and then the Great Lakes. And then finally, the event horizon happened in the Gulf with the BP oil spill. So that disaster. So it was one thing after another that sort of captured the nation's attention in terms of all of our natural assets sort of taking their turn. Something that never got a turn, though, up until that point was the Mississippi River, which was unfortunate because the Mississippi River corridor is responsible for so much of the nation's economy. Upwards of 5% of United States GDP can trace its direct value to the Mississippi River. So many jobs, over 1 million jobs, over $500 billion in revenue, and actually the main spoke of the wheel that comprises the global commodity trade of the planet is made possible by the Mississippi River. So all of that was sort of being neglected, and our mayors wanted to draw new attention to it, as well as protection from the disasters that were befalling them. So we came together in 2012 after that horrendous 400-day period and wanted to start working toward and achieving what other mayors had done in other parts of the country, especially around the Great Lakes. 10 years prior, in 2003, Mayor Daley of Chicago spearheaded a mayoral effort to save the Great Lakes. And they succeeded. They didn't do it alone, but they were a major partner in improving the water quality of the Great Lakes, making it a truly international effort of Canadian and U.S. mayors. And they were able to balance out better a lot of the unbalanced economies around what they used to call the Rust Belt through that whole corridor. We thought that our mayors could do the same thing and could achieve similar results. And I'm happy to report that they have. We haven't even been around 10 years yet as an association. 2022, next year, is our 10th anniversary. And our mayors have made tremendous strides. They've increased federal spending around conservation and water quality and disaster resilience by over $1 billion since we've gotten started. We've recoupled crop insurance to conservation performance, which used to be separated. And we have brought container on barge movement back to the Mississippi River. It had been gone since 2009. We've also brought back grant programs that had been slated for deauthorization, like the Marine Highway Grant Program. But most importantly, our mayors have been very successful in moving the balance sheet of the nation away from the very expensive column of recovery to the much more efficient, much bigger return column of resilience. We have a mantra inside the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. An ecologically healthy river is an economically robust river. We absolutely depend 200% on a functioning, healthy ecological system to power all three main economies on the Mississippi: manufacturing, tourism, and agriculture, in that order. Those are the three main revenue generators of our corridor, and they account for the bulk of the $500 billion in revenue that our river generates annually, employing over 1.5 million people directly. If you move away from the river, and sort of get the ambiance effect of what the river provides, those numbers go up dramatically. That's just what's made and who's employed directly adjacent to the main stem. That is a significant impact on our country, and the Mississippi River Basin makes possible the global commodity supply chain of the entire planet. We produce more food commodities than any other basin on Earth, and our river moves more commodities than any other river on Earth. Over 20 million people, including me, and this cup of tea here, are drinking Mississippi River water every single day in 50 cities in the US. So that water being clean and accessible is absolutely essential to healthy living, livable communities within our cities, and having a healthy manufacturing base and tourism industry. Nobody wants to fish, hunt, swim, and boat in dirty water. That'll make you sick. And certainly the cruise lines that have seen a renaissance in our nation up and down the Mississippi, the Ohio, soon to be the Missouri, and other rivers, that would not be possible if the ecology was destroyed. The draw of our river valley is all of that beautiful landscape that folks come from all over the world to see. In fact, the cruise lines have determined through poll data that our river valley has a larger tourist pool than the Grand Canyon worldwide. So we want to make good on that, and we want to leverage that as much as possible. But we can only do it if we have clean water and all the environmental systems that make all of this possible are running well, are sustainable, and they're protected. The other economy, manufacturing, that I mentioned. Manufacturing is the lion's share of our revenue along the Mississippi. It employs the most people, it uses the most water by far, and it generates the most revenue. What are we making? We're making beer, wine, chemicals, and we're also making a lot of food product from all those commodities that are coming out of the vast agricultural landscape that comprises the basin. In order for all that to happen, we have to have a working, healthy hydrological system full of environmental systems and services that regulate and move water naturally, much more efficiently and much better than human-built or built infrastructure ever could. So we want to maintain all that, expand its opportunities, add to our tax base, and improve living conditions for all our residents. Because let's face it, our cities would not be here at all. I wouldn't be speaking to you today from St. Louis if it wasn't for that river. I grew up next to it, as did many of our mayors. It's something we love and care about. And since I'm drinking the water right from it, as is my 11-month-old daughter and my 8-year-old daughter daily, this means something very personal to me, as it does my mayors. Their families are also drinking the water directly from that river, kids and their grandchildren. So this is a very kinetic, natural connection that we enjoy with that river valley. But make no mistake, it doesn't have to be wet for us to care about it. Our mayors work on broadband deployment, surface transportation resources, and everything else that goes into basically running a modern city in Middle America. We have to make sure all of that infrastructure works. Sometimes it deals with water, and a lot of times it doesn't. All of that is important to MRCTI. For instance, we've been working very hard over the last year to deploy 125,000 units of personal protection equipment to 77 of our member cities that have needed it to open schools safely, to run the election in November safely, and now to deploy the vaccine safely. We need equipment and volunteers to make all that happen. Again, it's not much to do with water, but it is much to do with our cities in our corridor. So those are the things that we work on. I'm happy to report we just realized a tremendous success this past week. On New Year's Day, President Trump signed the Resilience Revolving Loan Fund Act, an act that originated inside MRCTI and was originally proposed by our mayors in March of 2019. Congresswoman Angie Craig of Minnesota and Cedric Richmond of Louisiana, in your neck of the woods, championed, pushed, and advocated for this legislation to be passed. It did pass as its own unique bill. It's a $200 million piece of legislation. And what it does is it works to set up revolving loan funds in the states for counties and cities to fund resilience projects, either natural or built, so that we will have money that we can borrow directly from FEMA through our state to deploy wetlands, marshes, reconnect backwater areas, reconnect floodplain, all to move more water more efficiently and allow natural areas to provide flood storage instead of our downtowns. Instead of that water going into people's basements and into businesses, it goes into wetlands, low-lying areas, and confluence areas that used to flood naturally but have been cut off by various types of development over the last century. So that is a major success for us. And again, it moves more of the country away from very expensive recovery activities to much more efficient, much more return on investment activities around resilience, mitigation, and adaptation. We've been faced with quite a bit on our river over the last 15 years or so. We've realized $210 billion in actual losses since 2005 along the Mississippi. We've got to cut into that number a little bit. And we can't continue to do it by simply responding after a disaster. We have to do it before. And that's what the Resilience Revolving Loan Fund Act is all about, as well as the new strategy within FEMA that our mayors have been working hard toward. And that is protect before the disaster hits. Build back smarter, more sustainably. As we go forward, we have brought in a lot of partnerships, but one that we're most proud of, and it's one of the newest, is Rotary International. The immediate past president of Rotary International, Bernie, spoke at our annual meeting in Memphis in September of 2019. I think at that time he was the immediate past president. Now he's two presidents back, I believe. But he spoke of our cities and their Rotary clubs coming together around water infrastructure projects of critical importance. This is already happening in certain areas. La Crosse, Wisconsin, and Quincy, Illinois, both of those mayors presented great examples of how they have been working with their Rotary clubs on a new harbor in Quincy that included natural flood protection areas and natural flood storage. And in La Crosse, that city is working with their Rotary on reducing nutrient load and nutrient runoff into their part of the river, because their part of the river is their tourist draw. They need it clean and they need it healthy for all the fishing industry and the cruising industry and the hook and bullet crowd to come in and be part of that economy. And Mayor Cabot, the mayor of La Crosse, he's been spearheading that project with that Rotary Club now for a couple of years, and it's been successful in reducing the amount of nutrient load off of his watershed into the river, making the water cleaner and more able to support these economies. Also comes with it natural flood storage areas and expanded natural areas that can flood now instead of being walled off and better regulated. This helps during flood season, which, by the way, is coming up and is top of mind for us. So we believe that we can replicate those efforts up and down the Mississippi River in all of our cities. And we're very happy to be working with Haggai and his team in Baton Rouge on a specific project that we're working on right now around plastic waste reduction. You've probably heard in the news, plastics is a good thing for manufacturing and it's great for moving stuff around cheap, but it does have a price, and that is when it gets into our water. We've got that problem along the Mississippi River. Recent studies have shown, especially by LSU, been a pioneer in this field and a thought leader, that plastics are making its way into our water into our food, into everything. And the Mississippi River is no exception. Because the Mississippi drains 31 American states, a vast basin from Pittsburgh to Idaho, from Minneapolis to the tip of Louisiana, as well as parts of Texas. That's a lot of area for a lot of plastic to make its way into our corridor. And it does. And where does it go after that? It goes into the Gulf. And it has devastated the Gulf. Gulf of Mexico now has its own plastic trash patch, like the Pacific Ocean does. It's not as big, of course, but it's also wreaking havoc on that habitat, natural resources, and wildlife down there, just like it's taking a toll in our own river. You can go to the areas of the Mississippi and you can see just acres of plastic waste washed up and collected. We need to do something about this. It's great if we can mobilize folks to go out and pick it up. That's good. And that is something we're doing, but it would be even better if we can sort of attack the plastic waste problem at its source on the manufacturing side. At some point, if you want the bathtub to stop overflowing, you're going to have to shut off the faucet. You can bucket as much as you like, but the faucet's where it's coming from. So that's what we're interested in doing. And the way that we're going to do it is unique. We've partnered with National Geographic, the University of Georgia, and the United Nations to develop and deploy an app that fits on your phone. Anybody can use this, download and use this app. Soon, anyone will be able to. Right now, it's in the testing phase, which you go out to an area and you can photograph plastic waste, and that can be uploaded to a mainframe where the location, the type of plastic, and if it's legible, whose plastic it is in terms of company, is all uploaded into a database, analyzed and sorted and turned into knowledge-based data that we can actually use to begin to find who's responsible for most of our plastic problem. What kind of plastic is it? And what are the things that we can do in working with those manufacturers and those users to reduce our plastic problem and make a dent in what we find on the landscape? That's what we're really interested in doing. And that's what our mayors are really interested in doing, because it makes every resident all of a sudden a citizen scientist. And everybody that has a cell phone can be involved everywhere up and down the Mississippi. This can be especially useful with Rotary, because Rotary has such a marvelous capacity to mobilize, deploy membership, doing things that matter to our cities and our society. So with that capability and the other partners in using the app, developing it, and now working with Rotary to deploy it in activities that you guys are already engaged in around river cleanups, that can make a serious dent in and generate transformative levels of data that will make this work. It has already been working in other parts of the world. We're actually not the first to try this. It's been working along the Ganges River in India and the Rhine and the Danube in Europe. All three of those river basins have realized positive results and transformative changes by corporations because of apps like this. So we've seen it work in our sister rivers. We'd like to see it work here with Rotary and the Mississippi. So we're excited about developing that, and we're excited about the prospect for other water-related projects up and down the Mississippi River with Rotary going into the future. I'll just end with what we're looking at for 2021. Right now, we don't have a Mississippi River program like other natural resources in the United States do. The Chesapeake Bay, the Missouri River, the Columbia River, even the Rio Grande has its own discrete program in federal law. the Mississippi River doesn't. Our programs, or the things that sort of work with the Mississippi River inside the federal platform, are scattered throughout lots of different places and lots of different agencies. There's no real rhyme or organization except when you get to the Corps. And the Corps is in a tremendously disadvantaged position with a very expensive mission and never enough resources to meet it. But they do a fantastic job with what they have, saving lives and property, defending water from people and people from water. So we love the Corps, but we'd like to give them more, and we'd like to help them, empower them and other agencies even more. So we're working with Congress on a comprehensive Mississippi River program like the other rivers of the country enjoy already. The Great Lakes, especially, Great Lakes has 2 programs. We got none. So we really want to see that happen, and we think now is an opportune time with a new Congress and a new administration to really cover some ground on that. There's also a great bill in Congress that was introduced last year, and we think will be introduced again next month, around recycling and plastic waste reduction, empowering our cities and giving our cities resources to expand our recycling capacity and make our recycling systems a lot less leaky in terms of stuff that's going in doesn't fall out on its way to different processing points, which tends to happen if you have an old system with old capture technology. So those are major improvements that we would like to see. There is talk of a major infrastructure vehicle, 5th time's the charm, right? This will be Congress's 5th attempt at a major infrastructure vehicle early in February and March. We'll see. Hey, if one comes together, we want to make sure the Mississippi River Valley has some significant jurisdiction in that vehicle, and we'll be working toward that, certainly. Happy to answer folks' questions and anything that's on folks' mind, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Colin, that was great. Really enjoyed a lot of great information in that. We did have a couple of comments. Paul Arrigo said it's great seeing you, and he's looking forward to visiting with you when you bring your MRCTI's convention to Baton Rouge. I think it's in September, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's right. September 14th, 15th, and 16th will be in Baton Rouge. We're very excited to be a big part of the city's 300th anniversary. Mayor Broome has already rolled out the red carpet for our mayors. We are planning on it being a live in-person event, pandemic permitting, but we are very excited to be coming to Baton Rouge for our annual meeting.
Great. Stephen Holliday asks, how does the Mississippi River deepening from 45 to 50 feet impact your organization's mission?
Certainly. So deepening the Mississippi River will absolutely improve the commodity shipping economy for our corridor, especially for container on barge prospects, especially since container on barge is more suited to stuff that's heavy. So if it's really heavy and you need a lot of it, there's no cheaper way to move stuff on planet Earth than on water, if that's the case. So if it's like that, good, except you need a bit of a better draft in order to pile up more containers and move more stuff and, create a better economy around that, a better market. So that deepening will help us. It'll also help us qualify for post-Panamax vessels, which will include, right now we don't qualify for those because we don't have the depth to accommodate them. So it will be fantastic to capture that market for our ports.
So Chris Delia said, fantastic talk. He has served on the board of the Hudson River Foundation. It was established through a legal settlement. Its funds do all kinds of research. Do you envision anything like that for the Mississippi?
Yeah, we do. So we'd love to have, familiar with the Hudson Valley's work, they have totally turned that river valley and that basin around. It is one of America's great success points. Talk about one of the nation's most compromised river systems. It is now headed in a very much better direction, thanks to their work. So we've looked at that and seen, we can do that too for the Mississippi. There's some differences in scale. We're talking about 5,000 kilometers of waterway through the heart of the continent. So that's a little bit of a different scale. 60 billion gallons any given moment of water running through our river. And some points it's 2 miles wide. So it's a bit more to capture, but we do want to establish that through a Mississippi River program, like I talked about.
And we do want to give a shout out to Mayor President Broome. She is the co-chair this year with for the MRCTI. Yeah,
certainly. And she has been a tremendous leader for us. She worked very hard on the Resilience Revolving Loan Fund Act. She went and personally talked to Senate Homeland Security Committee herself to try and move that. She has pursued it with Senator Cassidy and with Congressman Garrett Graves, who was on House T&I, as well as Cedric Richmond. And she's just been a driving force to really hit the deliverables that the mayors wanted to achieve. She's been just a tremendous leader for us.
That's great. And so I know we have the pickup project that coming up. I think it's in April, where we're going to try and rally some folks to go out and pick up as much trash as we can. And more details will be coming out about that as we get closer to it.
Yes, sir. And we are very much looking forward to working with your team, Haggai, and Rotary of Baton Rouge on that. You're one of our pilot initiatives. We have 3 pilot cities in our plastic waste reduction: St. Paul, Minnesota, St. Louis, Missouri, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. These are the 3 places that are going to prove this out for our corridor. And all 3 mayors are totally invested. And we're so excited to have Rotary as a big part of this. So much of everybody's problems make its way to sort of your area of the river, unfortunately. And our mayors in Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, they totally realize and get that. And they see the degree of your problems a direct reflection on how good or bad they're doing their part. And that's been a real valuable point for our association, is these mayors have been able to come together and really learn and talk about how the river impacts each other and how they mutually depend on it, and how much we want to help Governor Edwards and his effort and the Louisiana corridor reduce as much of that liability as possible.
Well, Colin, thank you very much for spending some time with us today. It really was very informative, and looking forward to continuing to work with you on helping our river.
Oh, on this end too, you guys are doing great stuff in Louisiana. It's the only state in the nation that has 13 microbasins. You have a very challenging hydrology. If we can make it work in Louisiana and help your area, we know we can replicate that anywhere. And that's what we're trying to do. And Mayor Broome has been a great leader in that. So we look forward to working with you and your team, Haggai, and go Rotary.